Alright, so at this point I get to use my imagination a little bit more and design something that might be the front entrance to this factory, or just a variance that makes sense. Okay, so in this case I'm going to work on this side. Yep. And separate it out. And now I have to model with the idea of this thing is going to go back together, right? So anything that I might change as far as the blocks are concerned has to do with, I have to, let's say this row right here, this one right here, I can get rid of, but then I would have to design a new one that kind of goes into that place. But it has to be in that ratio right there. Or 2, or 3, or 4, but it has to be within that ratio. So I might just wipe out 2 of these. Just like that. And take and duplicate these faces over. Pull that over. I'll jump into 1. This is going to be a little harder because now I have 2 sides and hit 4 on the keyboard. Now that is going to be really hard and annoying, and I like to work in the orthographic a little bit. So now that I know the building is put together the correct way, the one side here, I'll combine it and throw it on a new level or layer. That way I could toggle it off. Now when I hop into the front view, it's not being hindered by the back mesh. Okay, vertex, take these vertex, or vertices at this point because there's more than one. Take them, move those across. And I want to move this to right about here. Alright, now jump back into my perspective view. And I think this would make a great entranceway. And one thing about the entrance is it's going to have probably some kind of stairs and something else here. So let's work out a doorway first, and then we can work out stairs and windows and stuff like that. So object, edit mesh, insert edge loop, dent. Right about there to there. That'll work. Grab my vertices. I'm going to pull those just about all the way down because I think the stairway would go in front of this a little bit. That way I'm not developing another mesh. So I'll keep the door in mind as far as our ratio goes. Think of it as whatever high, it's going to be about 3 to its width being 2. So 3 to 2 ratio for a door works out really well when you go to scale that if it's just about any kind of scenario. Okay, good. And lastly, bridge. Good, that's a nice opening. Gonna look and see if that's too much, too tall, what, and I'm just gonna zoom out and kind of picture that. That is a pretty big freaking door. So in this case, I'm gonna go to something a little bit more like that. And then I could work out something for these sides. And I like those side windows. In this case, I'm gonna go like that. And I'll work out some glass blocks. That could go right there. I just need space for them. And take and bridge those. Now, if you use a command like bridge, you can also hit G on the keyboard for last command. I know I said I didn't like keyboard shortcuts too much, but for that one, I do love using G. I'm not opposed for me using shortcuts or students. I want students to find those shortcuts out. Once you find a shortcut, usually it becomes yours and you remember it always. But if I tell you a shortcut, you're generally not going to remember it anyway. So I let you find those shortcuts, and you tend to remember them a little bit better that way. I know, doesn't make sense, but it does it as a teacher. Ask any other teacher, I guess. Modify, center pivot. Make this a little bit thicker. Okay, in this case, I want this to be duplicated. Pulled up just a little bit. Grab that face. And this is going to be my roughed in door. In which I will make a little bit thinner than the actual frame itself. Okay, and that's just going to be roughed in right there. And then I'll have to develop these blocks, as I said. To do that, I'm going to duplicate this face, pull it up, and divide it in half. Okay, that way I know what a block is going to be and how thick. For a glass block, I just generally do this. I'll extrude up. Get rid of this face now. I'll push this in. So modify center pivot. Then grab the face, extrude it in, and extrude it out. And that'll give it a little bit of an edge there. Give it some depth. But I don't want to make it too complex because, again, I want to make it texturable, easy. And this is kind of your first building. If you're new, I just want to have that experience not be painful. So duplicate it out, and now there should be a nice little gap between them. Okay, does the gap make sense? Yep. So in this case, this would be one model. Okay, and I would just end up duplicating this over and over again to be able to fill structures. Now, how do I get the size this way? Well, very easy. Once I have them all duplicated up and taking up enough space, I just combine them. And then when I'm in the engine, I can then go into something like the wireframe of its engine and I can choose whatever size I want after the fact. So I'm going to leave them this size because that'll allow me to resize them as needed somewhere else. And again, I could just probably just go like that, you know, size them down, but at least they're square and I could choose that after the fact. Okay, 6 on a keyboard. Great. Alright, so here I would have to have a mesh for steps. I'll duplicate this face, pull it out. Extrude it, and I'll extrude the run. And then insert edge loop here. Take this face, extrude it out. And keep continuing to do that until I'm happy with the amount of steps I want. If I need to even them up, I can do that after the and this is where we can get into really high detail, but for right now we're just blocking out the scene. Keep in mind, you know, you could have rails, you could start working on rails, doorknobs, all that other stuff, but you could get too far into this, so don't do that yet. You need to rough out your structures first before we go into that much detail. Alright, so there's a couple more pieces of detail that's not so repeated. Let's go on to the next video.